What's going on, everybody? Yeah, it's been a while. And today, we're going to talk about the video game wars, aka the 16-bit and the 32-bit video game wars. Oh yeah, that's when the wars was really got hot. And before you ask, no, I'm not going to talk about the 8-bit wars because, well, let's just face it. There's no need to talk about it because basically Nintendo dominated the whole damn thing. So, without further ado, let's get it. Now, let's set some ground rules first. Now, the video game systems that we are not going to include in these wars are basically the 3DO, the Neo Geo, and the Atari Jaguar because, well, let's just face it, all three of them went out about, I don't know, 3 or 4 years after they were launched. And they're not really worth talking about. Well, not in this video anyway, but I'll make another video about that later. But anyway, welcome to the Vault, Volume 2. Let's get on with these video game wars, shall we? Now, it's a 16-bit war. It's Nintendo versus Sega. Oh, yeah. Real big. Y'all excuse me, I do have to light up a smoke because I just need to think. So, y'all give me a second, please. That's better. Anyway. Now, of course, Nintendo had their SNES, which is the Super Nintendo Entertainment System, for those of you who don't know, or for those of you who wasn't born in the early in the 90s. And Sega had the Sega Genesis, and Japanese version of these systems is first the Super Famicom and the Sega Mega Drive, if I'm correct. If I'm not, just correct me in the comment section below. Okay, moving on. Now, for those of you who don't know, the video game wars was when 16-bit wars came around, I mean, it was hot. It was smoking. Nintendo and Sega were battling each other, coming out with, I don't know how many commercials to prove that their system was the best. Sega, of course, come out with some ridiculous commercials trying to prove that the Sega Genesis is a hell of a lot better than the Super Nintendo. With one commercial, if those of you guys who remember it, where they had a Sega Genesis strapped to a drag car or dragster, or should I say a rail dragster. You know what I'm talking about. You know the cars, they're long. Top rail, I think that's what they call it. I'm out of sync with the dragster game. I used to know everything about it, but now I'm way out of it. Anyway, it had a top fuel drag. Yeah, that's it. Top fuel dragster. And the Nintendo was strapped to they're like an ice cream truck, but it was very ridiculous. And their motto back then was Sega does what Nintendo don't. That's Nintendo with a NT at the end of it. But anyway, I mean, it was just ridiculous. It was wild. It was crazy. And even worse, the games. Yes, the games. The games were a hot topic. And one example, or should I say, before I say one example, there's a saying far as these, as far as wars is concerned, it's the same name, different game. Now, some of you who have never had the luxury of playing SNES or Sega Genesis probably don't know what the hell I'm talking about when I'm saying same name, different game. Well, it means plain and simple. The name is the same, but the video game is totally different. Let's check out a couple of differences, or well, one difference that I know of. One of them is Batman Returns. Now on the SNES version, of course, it's pretty good. It's a beat 'em up, and it's a beat 'em up. It's a beat 'em up. It's a driving game. Mostly it's a beat 'em up. It does have a driving level in it, and it does have like a what was that? Well, anyway, I can't remember the last part, but anyway, it was a pretty good game. Sega Genesis had Batman Returns as well, but the Sega Genesis version wasn't very good because it was made by a different company. Yeah, it was made by a different company. But it didn't stop there, because when Sega introduced the Sega Cd, that's when Batman Returns was pretty good, because it had, well, I'm going to take that back. It's half and half, because half of the game is the driving scene and half of the game is, the old scrolling, the old scrolling level. Platformer, that's it, yeah. Half of it was a platform and it was terrible, but the driving thing was pretty good. And plus, you even had the choice to just skip the platforming thing altogether. Yeah, that was pretty good, but in the end, as far as that is concerned, Nintendo still won. And these differences kept going in every release game that came out. Some of them, the graphics, sometimes the graphics was better on one console than the other. The gameplay is better on one console than the other. It just flip-flop back and forth, Depends on your system. Now, Sega, sometimes sometimes Sega had a better game than the Super Nintendo, and vice versa. And speaking of games, let's talk about two of the main games that came out. Now, of course, Sega Genesis has Sonic the Hedgehog. It's a platformer. Yeah, it's okay. I mean, I think I played one level of it a long time ago. I forgot, but... And then you got everybody's favorite, Mario. Now, Mario was basically hot. Everybody loves Mario. Yes, that was a platformer too, but hell, Super Mario World was very interesting. You got to ride on Yoshi and eat enemies with Yoshi and all that good stuff. I mean, Super Mario World was just wild. And, well, Sonic, well, it's just Sonic, it depends on, like I said, it all depends on what system you have. But anyway, I mean, these wars went on for at least, I think the 16-bit wars went on for 7 or 8 years. But to this day, well, nobody knows who exactly won the 16-bit wars between Sega and Nintendo. Most people say it was Nintendo. Because, well, Nintendo held its own. Had some great games, even though none of them was rated M, because Nintendo believed in, family-friendly video games. Ugh, anyway. And one prime example of this is Mortal Kombat. Mortal Kombat, basically the blood was, removed. The first Mortal Kombat. The blood was, the blood and the gore and all that crap. All that was removed from Mortal Kombat for the Super Nintendo version. But in the Sega Genesis version, all they had to do was put in a code and you got your blood. So that's the main reason why, everybody played Mortal Kombat on the Sega Genesis because, hey, it has blood. Super Nintendo didn't. But for some reason, Super Nintendo brought the blood back on Mortal Kombat 2 without a code. Oh, well, it didn't have a code to begin with, but they brought it back without a code. Well, I don't know why I keep saying without a code. There never was a code to begin with, but they put blood back in the game in Mortal Kombat 2. Nobody knows why. Well, actually, I do. I know why. Because plain and simple, because Sega basically, far as Mortal Kombat is concerned, Sega basically won that war because Mortal Kombat had blood. Sega's version had blood. Super Nintendo version didn't. And Nintendo wanted a piece of the pie, so they put blood back in the game. And to this day, any game that had blood in it stuff, a prime example of it was Resident Evil. Now, believe it or not, Resident Evil was never even released for the Super Nintendo. Anyway, Resident Evil didn't exist on the SNES or the Sega Genesis. But my point is, when Resident Evil 2 was imported to the Nintendo 64, which we'll get into in a few minutes, they gave you a choice of what color blood you wanted. All the other versions didn't offer that. But Super Nintendo did. I mean, not Super Nintendo, but the Nintendo 64 did give you an option. Why? Who knows? Nobody does. And once again, the smoke is out. But anyway, let's get back to it. But anyway, let's speed on to near the end of the 16-bit wars. Now, Sega, for some unknown reason, Sega of America, should I say, wanted to keep the system alive a little bit longer. So they come up with a couple of add-ons, or in my opinion, unnecessary add-ons that, really didn't catch on that good. And the first one was the Sega Cd, like I mentioned a minute ago. Now, of course, it only had maybe a handful of games, maybe 20 or 30. I can't remember. But it only had a handful of games. But the worst thing of all, you had to basically, it had its own power supply. Why? Well, it was very dumb. Because the plugs were, back in the day, they were big. The power brick from the Xbox 360? It was, let's just say, the plug for that was about half the size of that power brick for the Xbox 360. Yeah, it was a huge plug. And plus, you already had a plug for the Sega Genesis. Why in the hell did Sega didn't just make an adapter or a power adapter where basically you can plug it into the Sega Genesis and let the Sega Genesis power the damn thing as anybody guess? But they didn't do that. It came with its own power source. Later on, now what was I saying? Oh yes. Now, later on, they came out with the 3DX. Excuse me, 32X. I apologize. Now, when it first came out, it was like, I don't know, I think it was $170 something. But let's just say this 32X for the Sega Genesis, which again had its own power source, which was ridiculous. And I'm sure some of y'all probably seen that power source from GameSack. If you haven't watched their channel, I suggest you watch it because you learn a lot of stuff. Anyway, yeah, it had its own power source too. The damn thing was huge, but the thing was, it didn't come up with many games. Maybe I don't know, maybe 15 or 20 games, but it wasn't a huge sale at all. To make a long story short, I mean, the 32X was just so bad that most retailers were just trying to get rid of the damn thing that was selling for just $20. Yeah, $20. That's bad. But anyway, in the end, Sega's move on trying to keep the system alive, well, that wasn't a good move at all. Some people might say it was the start of, Sega's downfall. But anyway, that's for another video. That video's for another time. But anyway, let's just move on. We don't, like I said, to this day, we don't know who the clear winner of the 16-bit wars are. And let's just move on with the 32-bit wars, which includes, thanks to Nintendo's stupidity, another player that came to the game. 1 second. Yep, and that player was Sony. Sony came out with the Sony PlayStation, and that system was a huge hit. A huge hit. And basically, Sony just wiped the floor with not only Nintendo's Nintendo 64, which everybody remembers that three-handed controller. Y'all know what I'm talking about. Ugh, terrible ass controller. And then Sega came out with the Sega Saturn, which, well, it didn't do too good because it was released way too early. Or should I say it was released suddenly and nobody had time to prepare for that shit. So basically, Sega, it did have, like I said, the Sega Saturn did have games with it, but thanks to that screw up that they done, basically, Sega was basically on their way out, so I'm not gonna waste my time with that. But 32-bit wars really wasn't a war, because when Sony threw out the PlayStation, Nintendo or Sega was just done. They were annihilated. Nintendo was dethroned for the first time. Yes, they won the first war. The second one, now, round 2, who knows? Nobody knows. But this war, it was all Sega. I mean, not Sega, excuse me. It was all Sony. Because for one, Sony didn't have cartridges anymore. Sony had CDs, and everybody loved the CDs, yeah. Now, of course, the original Sony PlayStation disc had a black film on it to prevent piracy, but that didn't last too long. But like I said, Sony wiped the floor with not only Nintendo, but it wiped the floor with Sega as well. So you clear one of the 32-bit wars, of course, was Sony PlayStation. Now, I would keep going, but, I don't want this video to be too long. So, with that, I think I'm just going to cap it right here. And I will throw a spoiler out here. And basically, which everybody already knows by now, that Sega did came out with another system. It's called the Sega Dreamcast. It was an okay system, but unfortunately, it lasted for 3 years before Sega finally gave it up and just pulled out of the pulled out the console wars altogether because, well, they screwed up. It was so bad that they just decided to make games alone. That's it. And decided to side with their enemies, which is Nintendo. Yeah, weird. But anyway. And now let's give a quick recap on the two systems that I skipped. And that is the 3DO and an Atari Jaguar. Both of them ending in about 4 years. Sorry, 4 years. There you go. And the reason why, well, the Panasonic 3DO, well, it killed itself because 3DO price, the system cost about $700, and nobody didn't want to pay no $700 for a video game system. Well, actually, to be honest, it was a DVD player. Well, yeah, a DVD player. DVD player that played video games. Nobody didn't want a DVD player that played video games. It was just terrible. Very terrible. But anyway, as far as the Atari Jaguar, well, the Atari Jaguar has been out of the game since 1980. I think it was 1983. Yeah, somewhere around there. I think it was 82, 83. Due to the video game crash. And then for some reason, when the SNES and the Sega Genesis came out, they decided to come out with a new system. Hey, look at us. We're back. It's the Atari Jaguar. We got 32 bits. Guess what? Nobody gave a fuck. Because one, the controller was huge. Two, well, it had a number pad on the controller. Why was anybody's guess? And three, well, there wasn't too many good games on the on the Atari Jaguar. So, yes, they did come up with an add-on with the Jaguar CD. I don't think that's the official name of it, but yeah, they put a CD drive in it, or added a CD drive to it. It was basically a add-on to the Atari Jaguar, but it didn't save it. After year 4, it was gone. And as far as the Neo Geo, well, like I said, it wasn't a very popular system at all. And to this day, the carts, those suckers were huge, probably like that, big ass carts. It's like it was straight from the arcade itself. But even one of those carts, just the carts alone, just cost $200. That's today. I don't know how much they cost back in the days, because like I said, I never had I never had the chance to play one of those things. But they were expensive. But anyway, I'm going to go ahead and cut this video off right here. And join us next time. We dig into something else. My name is Jeremy Molly, and thank you for joining us on episode 2 of The Vault.